Hey, welcome back, y'all. Welcome to the channel. This will be my first real kind of like coding video for the 2021. So hope you enjoy it. So I post a bunch of videos about IonicFramework, React, Vue.js. This one's really more of Vue.js video. I posted a tweet earlier today. I had a little animation of what we're doing today. So I created this animation. Sorry, this accordion component today. As you can see, it allows you to kind of click on the header and expand to show additional content. And then it's smart enough to know to kind of close the other sections as they open when you open a new one. So we're going to kind of walk through this today and see what I built. I'm probably going to have to do a blog post on this because there's a bunch of different things that I pulled together to make this whole thing work. And what those things are as follows. So, and I'll go through them in more detail as we get into the, as we start to go through the work. So what they are is we use this a functionality called data attributes, which allow me to associate different attributes to the DOM elements. So basically what I'm doing is you probably could do it with classes, but I just did it with data attributes now that I'm thinking about it. I'm indicating whether the expanded section of the item should be expanded or collapsed. And so I'm keeping track of that with data attributes. I'm using view animations for the animation so that it just allows me to wrap a transition object around the area that I want, assign an animation to it, and as the section is shown and hidden, the animation happens. And then the last part is utilizing view slots. And what I'm doing with the code is, if you look at this demo, you can see the expanded part is basically an Ionic component that is added through slots. So it allows you to kind of customize what appears in the expanded section. And so that's what we get. So I'm going to do a combination of cutting and pasting and coding while I explain along the way. Okay, so this is your usual blank application that you get from generating the Ionic component. This is blank. For those of you who've seen my videos before, I usually go in and just remove this whole full screen stuff here. So let's take this out of there. Let's kind of crush all of this. Let's crush all of these styles. We don't really need them. And let's keep this completely empty. And so we should just have our blank app here. I think I'm going to do this one the old school way with the kind of methods, data, kind of blah, blah, blah. So we're going to create our, that's not the one I want. Where's my method? I'm going to create our method section, and then we are going to create a data section also. And this is how we're going to do things today. As usual, we're probably going to have a whole bunch of different Ionic components that we need to add. But we know to get things started, we're basically going to need a list of content to appear in our accordion, which I had been spelling wrong most of the day. I thought it was an A, but it's actually an O. So we will put our list of data in here. So in our accordion, we are going to show this data. We have an array of objects that have an ID, and they'll be passed into our accordion object. Let's put our accordion object up here now. So, and I think I called it, let's just be simple, my ACCO ACCORDION. I was spelling it wrong. And then we're going to say list. And then that's going to get my list. And so we're going to pass in that list into my accordion. ACCORDION. So that's my accordion. So now since we have the accordion, let's go ahead and we'll be try to pretend like we enjoy structure, component components, and then inside of our component, we will create my accordion.vue, and that'll be my accordion. I think I have a V base. see, what did I get? Yeah, I think that'll work for me. So let's take this out here. We know that name my accordion. We know that, what are we going to do? We know we have props, and we know at a minimum a list is one of my props. All right, so let's get that going, and then let's just get my list drawn. Let's b4 equals list item from, sorry, list item in display lists. When we get further along, you'll see why I'm not using the prop directly, because I want to kind of update my content. So, and then we know we need a key, and that key is going to be my list item dot ID. What's it complaining about? Let's add refinement. Just to make this happy, let's just do this. Okay, and this is display list. And display list is, that's not defined. What's this complaining about here? Keep on. I have my key. Why is that not happy? Key. List item ID. List item ID. Well, let's see after I clean up this other stuff and I get that right. So I need my data section down here. And so we're going to call this our display list. And then we're going to take our list that we got passed in. Why isn't this happy? Oh, I spelled list wrong. List item ID. Okay. And then we have our home view, which is probably complaining because I need to import my components. So let's put our one at the top, my accordion. And then let me import. So basically what we're doing is this exact example, right? We have a parent component, which is my home page, and then we have my my component, which in this example they use to-do list, and we're going to create a slot here inside that will allow us to use the Ionic components, just so you can show you how you can style what you see in the list. So since like I said, some of this stuff I've done already, and we want to focus more on the accordion, I'm just going to kind of cut and paste some code that I've utilized already to create the data that goes inside the slot. First, we're going to define a template. So now we have our template, and then inside of our template, we're going to put some Ionic code just to show, once again, the idea is to show you how you can style what's going on inside here. And so for the template, we need access to the variable that's being passed from the slot. So we're going to say vSlot. And then this is how we're going to get, I'm just using the abbreviation SP for slot property. And then so now what that means is that since I'm getting the property back, let me close this window. Since I have the two windows I need open, let's close that all the way. Since we're getting the property back that we need from the slot here, I can get access to the item ID and the item name from the list that's getting passed into my slot. So let's go back to my accordion now and adjust this to actually use the slot. So to make that work, what you need to do is actually inside of the parent component that is using the slot, you need to define the slot. And so what we're going to do, it's really as simple as this. Since we only have one slot, I should be able to just drop my slot in here. And as you can see, I'm getting the styled elements rendered, right? So I have my slot in, I'm passing a list item in as the item to the slot property. If I go back to my home, you can see this is my templates being used here as the one slot. And so it's getting this SP, and so now I get the item name and the item ID, which is getting rendered inside my list. So you can kind of do whatever you want inside of here. Later on, we're actually going to use an Ion. Let me add them now. Later on here, we're actually going to use an Ion button. So let's start with this. Let's start adding these things now. Ion item, Ion button, and then add it down here. Ion item, Ion button. All right, and it's what's clicking. Ion button has been registered but not been used. So let's add the button in here. So then inside of my template, underneath the item, I'm pushing a button. We'll remove this now since we'll just delete it now since we're not actually. Well, you want to know what? Let's actually put our function, our method in now. So we'll go down here inside of methods. So our button click method is button clicked. We expect to get the item of what was clicked, and then for now we're just going to do an alert item. We'll style this a little bit more later. Item.name. I didn't put the other type of any. Oh, I forgot I'm using Typescript. So let me just put any on there. What? There you go. Here's my buttons. It's a little bit bigger than I expected. Developer tools. Something wrong with my styling? Let's take a look. So I wanted my item to be on the next row. I think it has to do with how I'm styling the slot in my accordion. So let's go back to my accordion. I have my slot there, but I need to wrap some styling around that to get that button in the right place. So let's hop in and get that styling in there. So we want to wrap two things. We need a header. We'll just for now call this. So this is going to be the header. And then this will actually be the body. And the body is what we are going to hide and show. So let's put a div around there. Okay, and then let's apply some styles to this so we get what we want to. So around the body, we're gonna remove the display none for now because we still want our list items to show. All right, so now we're getting the look that we wanted. This button is going to stay big. Yeah, I guess it's fine to stay big. So now we're getting the look that we wanted. This should start to look like what you've seen in the what you saw in the video. And we put the style goes up here. So we're starting to see the box that goes around here. This is my header. I actually created a class for that, so we'll just put the class in, and then we'll go down the bottom and we'll add the class that I created for my header. So now we have our default header around the top, and then let's just, for now, in my default header, so it says something. This is header, and let's put the ID in the header. And we can get that from here. So we can say list item ID. All right. So now we have our list. Okay. So we have our list of items. And the way I set this up, there's a couple of things I wanted to accomplish. I wanted to make it so that you didn't have to keep track of visibility in your list item. You can pass any kind of data you wanted to pass into your list, and we'll manage the visibility using DOM elements to manage that instead. Let's put another one in top, Aaron, top. Right? So now we have our items. And what we want to do is we want to respond basically by clicking on the header. We want to basically hide and show all these guys. So let's start by hiding everything first. So we need to go back to my accordion, and remember on this style we're going to set the default to display none. N-O-N-E. Okay. So now everything's hidden. You just see the header. But we need a click event on the header. So let's add a. Oh, actually, no. Let's talk now about two things: refs and getting access to the document for the ref. So I didn't include refs in the list, the link, but I will add it later. So the idea is I want to get access to the actual DOM element here, and without using jQuery, we can do it by using refs. So I'm just going to call this ref. And what I need to do is I need to be able to know which element actually got clicked on. So each one of the refs needs to be unique. So the way that I'm doing it is I'm going to combine the item ID with just a simple name for each ref that I create. And so this way I can track down which item actually got the click on it. And so the way that I'm handling tracking that down is I am as I said, I'm combining the object that got clicked with the ID. So for the header, it's header and then the ID. And so that's how I can track down the ref there. And then for the actual body that will be expanded and collapsed, we'll just call it body. And we'll use the exact same approach. So we come down here. So that's the header, and this is the body. And so let me put some comments in here so it can be visible. And then we come down here, and then this is the body. Save that. Okay. So now we have our header up here, and we have our body down here. We need our header to respond to click events. So we're going to do a click, and then we are going to, let's just do this. When the item click, we're going to pass the item, and we're going to call the method called header clicked. And so let's hop up. We need to add our method section. Methods, and then header clicked. We're going to get an item, and Typescript, we got to define it at any, and it's complaining because I'm not using it. Well, I was not using it. Okay. So, like I said, inside of here, we need to be able to actually get the ref. Where am I? This specific guy. Like I said, we could do it with the document, get ID, or document, get class, but I'm just using refs to kind of show you what some cool things you can do with refs. And so what we want to do inside of our click event is, well, first just to show you how we can actually get the item that was clicked. So if I say this will, so we click the header. So, and then if I do a console log, let's make sure, since I'm doing TypeScript here, let's use TypeScript there. So I want my line to be TypeScript here also. It doesn't need to be, but I'm just trying to be consistent. I set it to TypeScript. Is it compiling? Yeah, I guess this is just a thing that's languishing. So now let's open up our developer tools. Kind of expand it a bit. I think I can collapse this a bit here. And then now let's see if I click. All right, so when I click, this is dumping out the ref, which is, so it's basically telling me it got this object when I clicked. Now let me click the next one. So using the refs that I was created, I'm actually able to find out exactly which item got clicked on. But what I want to do is when the item gets clicked, I actually don't want the header, I want the body, right? Because I want to hide and show the body. So let's switch this to body. And that's going to get me the body. So I don't have to kind of dereference a bunch to get the element. This is what I'm going to do. We are going to use this function. We're going to say, take the item, use its ID, get the ref. Oh, so now I actually have the body. I'm going to store the body in the current element. That's what current E is. I just abbreviated it. So now I know which body I'm trying to work with, because that's the body that's associated with this header that got clicked on. And then what I want to do is we want to kind of loop through all of them and identify which one actually got the click. And then what we're going to do is we're going to either hide or show the item that got clicked. So the first thing as I said, we're going to loop through them. So let's do this display list, and then we are going to map function, and then so any because we're in TypeScript, wrap it, and then because I'm going to be inside of this loop here in Vue, inside of the method sections, I'm going to pass this back in so I still have the context. Okay, and then it's actually inside of here where we want the current element. Do I want it inside the loop? Yes, because what I want to do is get each one of the bodies and set it to the current element. And then, so actually let's do this here. So now let's format this so it's clear to see. Okay. So now what's going to happen is I'm going to click on a header. And then when I click on the header, this is the item that I clicked on. And I want to find the match of it. So to find the map, to find the match, I'm going to loop through all of the items that are in my list. And then if the ID of the one that got clicked matches the ID that I'm getting back from my display list, then I found the item in my list that got clicked on specifically. So what we're going to do is if E equals, so if my element equals item, i.e. the item was clicked. So I had to take a little detour here. I spent a bunch of time trying to demonstrate what data attributes were and did it in a way that was more confusing, so I just cut it out, and we're going to try to take another stab at it. So hopefully this is clear to you. Apologies for the break in the recording. So this is the HTML syntax for data attributes, and we can access them through JavaScript. So what I'm going to do is we're going to create a isVisible data attribute, and it's pretty straightforward the way that you do that. And so the data attribute isVisible is going to, sorry, not isVisible, is expanded, because I think that's just better. We're going to do it like this. So instead of this current element is visible, we're going to say current data set is expanded, and I'll show you in the debugger how you can actually see these. And this should be is expanded, and this should be is expanded. Okay, so what we can do now is we can take a look at the action and how the data attributes is set. Okay, so now let's click on header 1. So we did a breakpoint, and you can see the current element, it has this is expanded set to true on it. And so if I go down here and I look at current element, is it current E? Yeah. And then I say data set, you see it holds my variable there. And then as you can see how I got it, I just say data set is expanded. So basically what this is, it's the official way to create additional attributes that are associated with your specific object. As I said, the syntax is simple. Any attribute on any element whose attribute name starts with data hyphen is a data attribute. I'm assigning the data attributes directly with this data set. So where did they talk about the data set? Fine. Yeah. It also says there's an easier way to access it. You can access it by the data set property, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm getting my element, I'm saying the data set, I get the variable. So this is replacing where you see it in other examples where people are actually modifying the list here and creating an isVisible attribute. I want you to be able to think of your data as clean and not being modified. So I'm just storing the isVisible or isExpanded attribute on the actual DOM element. So, and as you just saw here, it's looping through and setting them all. So any element, so let's click on another one. And if we look here at current E again, we can see that the one that was currently clicked is no longer expanded. So now let's take this variable here and actually control whether this thing is hidden or shown. Let's do all these. Let's kind of push this back to the side. And what we're going to do is we are going to use the view hide or show method. And we're going to say v show is expanded. And then we're going to pass it the actual item that we're rendering. And then what we're going to do is, if this guy returns true, then we'll show the element. If this guy returns false, then we'll hide the element. So let's go down to our is expanded. And we need our listed element. This item is called item. Any. And then in here, we're going to use the same approach that we did before to actually get the item. We're going to take the list item ID, and using the ID, we'll actually get the body that we want. So now that we have the current element, first thing we want to do is that on the first render, our ref isn't in place, and so our current E is going to be undefined. So we just want to bail if that's what we get. And then after that, we're going to leverage that data attribute that we added. And what we're going to do is we're going to say if the data attribute, if the data set object, data set property is expanded is set to true, then we return true, otherwise we return false. And so now what will happen is up here on is expanded, it will look at this list item, it will determine if it has an expanded set to true, and if it's true, will return true. If it's false, it's set false. And then based on that, it will either hide or show my accordion object. Well, let's see if I did this all right the first time out. So apparently I did not. So let's see. Well, first let's take this breakpoint out. Just slowing everything down. Is expanded, is expanded. You can view so basically you can view the attribute this way, but you can't set it this way. So what I want to do is this. I want to do a set attribute. And my attribute name is DataSet is expanded. So we do DataSet is expanded, and then that is set. This is how we assign it. We can't assign it the other way. Okay. See if that makes a little more sense. So if the item that got passed matches the current element in the list, then we want to set the data is expanded attribute based on, we're basically toggling it. So if it's already true, then set it to false. If it's not true, then set it to true. And we need to kind of change the set attribute down here also. and this is always false. Sorry, and since everything's stored as a string, I could just set this as a normal Boolean and it'll be stored as a string on the object. What are we complaining about? Where's my error? There's my error. It's got an extra guy here it doesn't need. Okay. Let's format this again. And let's just walk through what's happening again. To set the attribute, you have to define it this way. To get the value, you can just say dataset is expanded, and you remove the data hyphen in the beginning, and then you kind of remove the hyphen here and you get the camel case. So let's see if we get the hide and show. Oh, I know what's happening. Okay, so here's the problem. What's happening is that modifying these attributes on the DOM object is not going to trigger a view re-render. So to trigger the re-render, I'm just going to reassign my array, and that will force them all to get updated. If someone has a better idea, I'm open to it. So I just do this. And this will reassign the display list, which will force the update. I hope. Fingers crossed. And I'll see what we get. So there we get. So I'm getting my open and close based on everything. It's not closing it if it's already open. Let's try this another way. Let's just, I mean, this shouldn't matter, but let's just comment this out and try it the old-fashioned way. So why is that working? Oh, it doesn't matter. It does work. So if my data set is expanded as true, then set the to false. Otherwise, set it to true. So now you can see I can open my objects, shutting a new one every time. And I can open and close it. But we got this kind of jarring jump. And so this is where the last of the things that I touched on come to play. So I'm trying to stick with my references here. So I referenced earlier on view animations. So we're using view animations, and with view animations, it has this cool thing. You can just wrap a transition object around something, and based on the hide or show, you can have an animation that's named off of this. And then it tracks what happens when you enter it and when you leave it, and then what the transition should be and where you want it to kind of end up. We're not doing opacity, we are doing size. And so to make that work, we need to set the default size for what we want our body area to be. And so let's go in and set that body area. I think I might have already created a class for this. I had to do some calculation to figure out what I thought looked good for my design. I suspect you will have to do. Yes, I set my design to 100 pixels. And so we're going to use that. Well, first, we're going to use that down when I wrap my body here for the transition. So if we look at the documentation here, sorry, this one's going. We look at how you support transitions. We're going to wrap the body that we want to transition on, and we want to transition on the slot. So we're going to wrap the slot with the transition object. Sorry, we want to wrap the whole body, not just the slot. My bad. You wrap the whole body, the whole body. We're gonna wrap this whole body here. And then the next thing we need to do is we need to actually create this transition. And I believe that I named my transition something differently than fade. remember you can, no, I left it as fade. You can name it whatever you want. You just need to make sure as you set up the classes, it goes right. I'm not a CSS animation guy. I Googled around and found this, what my value should be. I can kind of talk through what they ended up being. So basically what this is saying is that I needed to transition the height in 3 seconds. Any overflow from the box after the height is transitioned should be hidden. And then when it transitions the height, it should end up at 0, right? So it's going to open all the way up to the 100 pixels that I set. And then when it transitions and closes, it's going to reduce down to 0 pixels. And the transition should happen in 3 seconds. So let's see what we get. Uh-oh, I'm seeing some errors down here. Let's do a hard reload. Okay. So we get our transition. Nice and smooth. And then, like I said, which we covered earlier, was that the slot properties are getting passed through. So when I click on the alert, when I click on the details, you can tell that I'm actually getting passed up to my parent, this specific object, because it's got the name here in the item clicked. Okay, so it's switching. So the real meat of this, what's happening is how I'm using the data attributes to keep track of the expanded state or not expanded state. And that is because in order to get these view transitions to work, I need to use this hide and show. I tried doing it another way. You could probably kind of force your style to be hide and closed. I mean, to be displayed none and displayed block. But I just thought it's more intuitive when you read it that I'm doing a V show, and the V show is either hiding the element or showing the element, and then based on that, I'm transitioning in or out. I thought that using the data attributes on the specific elements was a much cleaner approach than, as I said earlier, adding is visible to each one of these items, which is what I had done originally. I had is visible on here, and I would loop through and I would just determine the is visible. I like this approach. It's cleaner. The idea is to just have further separation from the accordion component. So what I'm trying to do is make it so that you can use this accordion component past any list you want to it, and then past any list you want to it, and then control how it's rendered by using this slot. I know I covered a lot of stuff in here. I'm going to eventually write a blog post that will kind of cover a bunch of this. So hopefully you will check that out. This video turned out a little bit longer than I wanted to. There were some places that got a little bit confusing, but hopefully you found this beneficial. And I will see you next time around. Thanks a lot for watching the video. Please make sure you like and subscribe. And I hope this is something that you find beneficial. Thanks. Bye.